Hello everybody, welcome to another video. I'm going to start this by saying that I don't 100% know what this is going to be yet. I have some thoughts in my brain that I want to express about self-care, how as equestrians we often put the care of our horse ahead of caring for ourselves, which in a weird way can almost mean that our horse gets less care because when we're not at our best, we can't be our best for our horse. We quite often think of horseback riding and equestrianism as, it is a hobby, but I think it goes beyond a hobby and becomes a lifestyle. And sometimes I think that in the pursuit of that lifestyle, we can sort of forget that we are a person outside of horses. And for me, that has definitely been the case over the last 2 years. Prior to the start of the pandemic, I was very much involved with horses, but I was in a master's program. It was very much something I did on the weekends and sometimes during the week, but I had a lot going on in my life outside of horses. And I feel like over the last 2 years, I've kind of lost that. And recently, as things have been opening up again, we still have mask mandates here in Ontario and things like that. COVID is still really bad. I don't want to get into the politics of COVID in this video because I think that's something that we have all had enough of over the last couple of years, but more so just the way that the last 2 years have affected me and the way that I take care of myself and the way that it has sort of shifted my focus away from other things that I used to do all the time that I really enjoyed. You can see a very messy bookshelf here that's missing a lot of books, along with a bunch of other things that I either haven't been able to do over the last 2 years or that I've really gotten away from doing because I've been focusing so much of my time and money on horses. Over the last few months, I reached a point where I was nearing burnout, and I've definitely burnt out. I am exhausted still all the time. So yeah, I want to talk a bit about those things and just have a chat. This is not going to be a type of video that I do very often. I started this channel to be a place that I can document my journey with Merlin and my thoughts on different things as, an amateur equestrian who is very devoted to learning, to constantly evolving and learning more and becoming a better horse person for my horse. But I think part of that also has a lot to do with prioritizing my own self-care, taking care of myself so that I can be a better version of myself for my horse. And this was sort of something that some people that I follow on social media have been posting about. So I've mentioned in previous videos that I got into positive reinforcement training primarily through Shelby Dennis and Jill Treese of Jet Equitheory. They've both done podcasts and have made Instagram posts and stories recently about how in the last few months and years, they've both been going through a journey of rediscovering what made them fall in love with horses in the first place and why they were so in love with the animal. And also in the process of doing that have realized that the sort of mindset that is perpetuated in the horse industry was affecting their personal lives and their outlook on themselves and affecting, their energy and their happiness and their mental health. Those posts have got me thinking, and one of the ones was, I'm gonna pull it up here. Uno secundo. Jill did an episode of her podcast called Let's Get Personal. That episode, so it's the Equitheory podcast number 90, and it was posted about a month ago, and it really got me thinking. She sort of takes a deep dive into her health and some of the big changes that she's made in her health over the last, I think it's over a year. In the show notes for that episode, she says it's all too common in the equestrian world that we overlook our personal health and even joke about how much we give our horses but wouldn't dream of doing for ourselves. Maybe this episode will inspire some ideas in you of how you can help your horse by helping yourself. I talked a little bit in the video about the story of how Merlin became mine, a little bit about my history with mental health and things like that. But long story short, I have a history of anxiety, depression, and a couple of other things, insomnia, that are sort of side effects of my anxiety mostly. I've been doing a lot of research over the last year or two, something that I think is very common for people to say recently, that I've been looking into the potential of me having ADHD. The more that I read and learn and watch videos about how ADHD manifests differently in women than it does in men, and certain aspects of my personality that I've always both enjoyed but also hated, how it matches up so well with descriptions of adult female ADHD. And I think it's really common for people in the horse world to suffer with some sort of mental illness. That is partly, I think, because of the intensely therapeutic effect that horses can have on humans. We see this all the time in, both physical therapy, horses being used for therapeutic riding and things like that, but also newer therapies where horses are being used to treat different mental illnesses. I think that's one of the reasons, aside from the fact that they're incredible animals and we can do these wonderful things with them. But somewhere along the way, the child or teenager that felt drawn to horses for reasons that they couldn't describe gets lost. And we become so focused on competition and training and going up the levels that we almost forget why we fell in love with the animal in the first place. And it's something that has definitely been in my head over the last few years. A lot of people go through a period in university where they take a really, really long break from riding. I never really did that. I leased a horse up until literally the week before I went to university in my first year. And then during the term of my first year of university, so September to April, I didn't ride. That's the longest I've ever gone without riding, so about 8 months. And I hated it. I hated not being around horses. I hated not being able to ride. I put a call out on Facebook asking if anybody needed help or catch riding or anything like that. And I began about 3 years of catch riding a bunch of different horses, and it was incredible. And then I went through another sort of 5-month period when I first moved to Ottawa where I wasn't riding. Again, put a call out on Facebook. Merlin's breeder saw the post, put me into contact with my coach, with my now coach, and the rest is history. So I've never really gone through a period where I wasn't riding, but until very recently, every single horse that I've ridden has been one that I don't own, and also ones that I'm not paying to lease. So pretty much everything that I do with those horses, rightfully so, is dictated by their owners. All of this to say that my relationship with horses over the last 5 years, sort of between 2015 and 2020 until I bought Merlin, so for that 5-year period, was very different. I was much more removed from the emotional side of things. It was very much just going, riding, and then going home, and still having a huge life outside of that because I was in university, I had friends, I was traveling a lot. And then 2020 came. In May, I was going to go with one of my best friends, who at that point I wouldn't have seen in 4 years because we met when, fun fact, I also did a study abroad in Scotland. We were flatmates when we were both studying in Scotland, and we were going to go on this beautiful month-long trip to Europe, and obviously that got canceled. Since then, I haven't really been anywhere but the barn. In a lot of ways, I'm glad that that incredible trip I had planned never happened, because if it hadn't been canceled, I wouldn't have gotten Bingley, and I most definitely would not have gotten Merlin. But when the pandemic started, this trip that I was planning, that I was really looking forward to, was canceled. I had no idea when I was going to be allowed out to go to the barn next, because we had no idea when anyone but sort of essential people were going to be allowed back at the barn. And this was provincial mandates, there was nothing we could do about it. I was living by myself in a tiny apartment, and if I hadn't gotten Bingley, I don't know what I would have done. And to go back to my earlier conversation about the potential of me having ADHD, there's a reason why I brought that up. One of the things that makes me think that I might have ADHD is that I hyper-focus a lot. I can't do anything by halves. If I'm going to start doing something, I'm going to invest so much time and energy into it. I'm going to go into it full throttle, learn as much as I can, get as invested in it as I can, become as perfect at it as I can be as quickly as possible. That sounds intense. It is. It's something that I both love and really dislike about myself, because I can't enjoy a hobby at 50%. That tangent to say that when I got Merlin, I hyper-focused on him and his needs, and working with him and spending time with him and developing that bond and spending as much time at the barn as possible. I've sort of been hyper-focusing on him for the last 2 years. He consumes, when I say 75% of my life. That's not exaggerating. It might even be higher. I love that. Like, he is a huge part of my life, and he will remain a huge part of my life for the next 30 years. That being said, spending so much time at the barn and also working a million jobs to try to pay off the vet bill from his surgery. So not only have I been hyper focusing on him, but I've also been spending any free time that I may have had outside of him or outside of horses, working my ass off, doing for the last year, 3 different jobs to be able to pay him off and afford him. So because I was spending so much of my free time outside of horses that I otherwise would have been spending, reading or knitting, even then I took another hobby, knitting. As I see here, I knit a lot. I took that and monetized it because of course nowadays you can't have a hobby without monetizing it. I feel like I've lost so much of the effort that I put into self-care while I was in university, because without self-care I would not have survived university, without taking the time to do things that I enjoyed just for the sake of doing them. There's a lot of things that I used to enjoy that I've stopped doing. And not just that, but I've also stopped taking as good care of myself as I used to. I eat like absolute crap. The pride that I used to put into my space is gone. My apartment has been a mess for like a year. And this is me being super real and super honest, because that's one of the reasons why I started this YouTube channel. And it's been something that I've been thinking about a lot lately that I just feel like I just need to get off my chest. I used to read a lot. I've gotten away from taking proper care of myself, which sounds pathetic as a 26-year-old woman that I'm not taking good care of myself, but it's just the truth. I used to go out for drinks and like hang out with friends all the time while still maintaining a strong presence at the barn. This was before COVID and before I had Merlin, but still I'm in the sort of tough position where a lot of my really sort of super close friends, my best friends, live on the other side of the country in either direction. 2 of my best friends live on the East Coast, and one of my best friends lives out west in Alberta. But I also have some really wonderful friends here in Ottawa outside of horses that I don't see nearly enough. That sort of hyperfixation on Merlin over the last 2 years, I feel like, especially over the winter, resulted in me being there with him a lot, but not being as present as I like to be when I'm with him. I felt like I wasn't truly appreciating the time that I was spending with him, which as a result, it's gonna sound woo-woo, but like that sort of energy that you feel around horses, that horses can sense, I felt like I lost that spark for a few months. And it was also partly because I was working so much. So I have recently taken some steps to prioritize my own self-care and striking a better balance between my work life, my horse life, and everything else. And right now I feel like the work life and horse life are about 50-50, and everything else gets sort of slumped together in a very small part of my life. And I really want to stay as present and as focused in work as I am now, as present and as focused in horses as I am now, but also invest more time and energy into friendships and hobbies and spending time with people, learning new things. I just want to get back to a bit more of the person that I was before Merlin. My camera just cut off because of internal heat issues, and I have no idea where I left off. I was rambling hardcore. So I was talking about ways that I've recently started to make changes in my life to start taking better care of myself, become a more functional adult, because even though I'm 26, I still very much feel like the 18-year-old kid who went off to university. Like, I still, the thought that I am quote unquote fully functioning adult who, works a full-time adult job and pays taxes and things like that still doesn't compute in my brain. And I feel like that's the reality as you get older. When you're a kid, you have this idea that once you're done university, you'll be like, yep, I'm an adult now. That's not the way it works. You always feel like you could know more or learn more. Like, I basically feel like my entire life is just one huge case of imposter syndrome. I'm gonna end this very rambly, super tangenty video. If you've made it this far, good on you. I applaud you. I have no idea how long this video is going to be. I'm going to try to make it as short as possible. So I'm going to end this just by saying a little bit about how I have started to prioritize my own self-care and taking better care of myself in recent months, in the hopes that if maybe you've been struggling with something similar, that it will inspire you in the same way that those episodes of Jill and Shelby's podcast inspired me. So number one, I have gone down to one job. I was working my full-time job while also being both a teaching assistant and a corrector at the university where I did my master's, and it's a wonderful extra source of income. I would not have paid off a few small debts over the last year had I not done it, but I'm in a position now where I don't need to. I've finished those contracts and I don't think I'm going to do them again in the fall, even though it would help me pay off my student loans quicker. That's one way. Offloading some of the work so that I have more free time to focus on things that I enjoy. Another thing has been these videos, and it's been absolutely wonderful. It's been fantastic and so much fun making these videos. I'm discovering a huge passion for, I don't want to say filmmaking, but like video editing. Another change in angle because my battery died again. I love this camera, but the batteries do die very quickly. Another thing that I've started doing is putting more effort into planning things that I need to get done. I've always been into planners and putting a lot of effort into having a really nice diary, and I've done bullet journaling for a while. This is the bullet journal that I've been using over the last 2 years ish, but I sort of got out of it and it's just, I'm taking a break from it. So I found an app. I actually saw, I was very influenced by TikTok. I found an app called Finch. It's like a to-do list almost. It's like a daily to-do list. And if I think too far ahead in the future, it stresses me out, at least at this particular moment. So I go day by day, and you can set daily tasks and weekly tasks and things like that. So I have certain things that show up every day. I will admit, I put things as stupid as brushing my teeth, taking Bingley for a walk, washing dishes every day, putting those dishes away. Having this app, because basically when you complete an item, it's gonna sound so stupid, but when you complete an item, you get energy. For the reason it's called Finch is because you have this little bird. Mine's called Gizmo. And they go on journeys and come back and they grow up. And it's like, it makes self-care a game almost. And it's gonna sound so stupid, but this is just how I've tricked myself into starting to take better care of myself, is through this app. I feel bad when I don't get enough energy for Gizmo to go on his daily adventures. It sounds so stupid, but anyways, this has sort of taken over the sort of planning part of my life, and that has really started to help. And by inputting those things in, I've started to take better physical care of myself. Since I've started doing these things over the last month or two, I feel like when I go out to the barn, I'm so much more present. I have enjoyed my time at the barn and with horses in general over the last, say, 2 or 3 months more than in the 4 or 5 months before that. And it's such a wonderful feeling, because it means that doing this work on myself has the sort of double effect of making me feel better and like better mental health wise, and happy that I'm prioritizing myself, which is something that I haven't done in basically 2 years, while also by extension making the time that I spend with Merlin better and more meaningful. So this might be the end of the video. I've put up a little question box on my Instagram asking people for things that they do to help prioritize self-care and things like that with horses, and I might share some of those if I get a response. I don't pretend like a lot of people will respond because I don't have a very big Instagram account, but I do have some friends that I know are going through or have gone through similar things. So if they have anything to share and they're willing to let me share it, I will do so. And if that is the case, I will film that tomorrow and insert that here. So it is now the next day, and as I've been editing the footage that I filmed yesterday, part of me is wishing that I would have put a little bit more effort into not looking like a complete cave goblin. Today, I want to very quickly go into some of the responses that I got on Instagram. So last night I put up a question box where I just asked people to share some ways that they try to strike a good sort of horse/normal life balance. I knew that some people might not necessarily want to share something in the written word. So what I did is I also put up a couple of polls this morning, and I've had a lovely response, which is really, really nice. So the first first poll was, I said, also curious to know, have you ever felt burnout or a lack of motivation related to horses, even if it's just a hobby? And the options were hell yes and nah. 86% of people who responded said hell yes, meaning the other 14% said no, which I thought was really interesting because it's something that I felt like I was not alone in, but that I was less of a horse person for feeling tired and needing a break. Not necessarily in the last few months, but like in the past when I've sort of had similar feelings or issues. The other poll that I put up was, if yes, how did you deal with it? And I put 4 options, and then people could message me if they had anything else to say about it. And the options were time away from horses, refocusing in other areas of your life, less riding, more chilling, and pushing through it despite the exhaustion. So 9% said time away from horses, 27% said refocusing in other areas of your life, 55% said less riding, more chilling, and 9% said pushing through it despite the exhaustion. I'm really, really glad to see that only 9% of people said that they pushed through it rather than taking the time to really just relax and refocus a little bit. And I did get a few responses to my initial question that I posted last night. I thought I would share a few of them. So I had a friend reach out to me, and this friend works with horses. They said that on the poll that where I gave the 4 options, that they didn't want to click any of them because it's a balance of all of them that's needed when you feel that tiredness. And this person said, I live where I work with horses, and sometimes when we're busy, I'll realize that I'm having a really hard time with self-care, which in turn usually lands me with a little burnout. It's so hard to balance it all, and it really does take a lot of balancing. Keep pushing through it, but maybe skip a day of heading to the barn last minute and treat yourself with a form of self-care that you love. Or go to the barn, but just cuddle and groom and enjoy the horses rather than focusing on the working aspect of it all. There's so much work, but have a silent and beautiful way of making even the hardest days better and worth it. Another friend of mine said that when they feel themselves getting tired, that they tend to, if they want to still work with their horse, they'll focus on other things. So things like groundwork or introducing bitless and bridleless work, positive reinforcement, something that is, and this is a quote from the message that she sent me, less energetically demanding for her, but still doing something with her horse. And then last but not least, another friend of mine responded and said that, I'm gonna share the response in full because I thought it was really, really insightful, and it's definitely something that I connect with, especially since I started working more with positive reinforcement and have gotten away from the sort of competition, sport horse industry driven side of the horse world. I've sort of gone on a similar journey as her. So she said, I feel like I was able to ground into a way more healthy relationship with my mental health and horses when I was able to take time away from it. But I think for people who aren't going to be giving themselves or their horses an extended, undetermined/indefinite break, that finding a way to not have it be a reflection of your self-worth is a huge game changer. Taking time away also completely rewired my self-comparison tendencies with other equestrians, which improved my mental health a lot. That sort of comparison aspect, the sort of way that as equestrians we compare ourselves to other equestrians. My friend went on to say, I think prioritizing building a really strong and personal connection with your horse is probably the best antidote to the pressure that we can put on ourselves. The more you're willing to get to know yourself and your horse, the easier it is to see your relationship and connection for what it really is, which in my experience is not about how many times a week you ride or go to the barn. 100%. This I felt on a spiritual level. But people in my personal life, friends and family, tell me all the time that they find the relationship that I have with Merlin to be really beautiful. And it's, I don't know if you can tell by the channel, but it's one of my most treasured relationships in my life. And I think one of the reasons why my relationship with Merlin is so strong is because I have had pretty much nothing to do with him over the last 2 years but build that bond. Obviously, I did groundwork and stuff to prep him for being ridden under saddle. But so many people, when they buy horses, they start riding them immediately and they form their initial bond with their horse through riding and the pursuit of the sport rather than the pursuit of that connection that almost every horse person wants to feel with their horse. I will read the last little bit of that message that my friend wrote. She said, it's about the soul bond that you have. As I'm saying this, I guess what I'm getting at is that diving into the spiritual side of horses has probably been the most instrumental shift in my life balance. I encourage everyone, if they're open to it, to explore horses and one's connection to them from a spiritual lens. It is rich ground. And first of all, to my beautiful friend who sent me that, thank you so much. That response was I was like, yes, I need to share this because it articulates a lot of what I was trying to say yesterday, but was too rambly and just off topic and ADHD to articulate. As I'm filming this, I've edited down the footage from yesterday to about 20 minutes. There was 55 minutes of footage to start, which, oh my God. I'm not gonna go on for any longer in this section because the video will be long enough. I just wanted to share those responses and I will get back to Caitlin from yesterday. I will bid you adieu with these words. If you feel like so much of the good, loving, positive energy that you have goes into your horse and not enough goes into yourself, and that's affecting the time that you do spend with your horse, try to reinvest some of that energy back into yourself. Not just for the sake of your horse, mostly for the sake of yourself, but I can guarantee you that it will make you feel so much happier and so much more, not rewarded, but so much more satisfied, or I don't know what the word is, but it will make you feel better about the time that you do spend with your horse. This has been a very long video. I'm not going to pretend that a lot of people are going to watch it. If you've made it this far, you're an absolute trooper. It's something that I really wanted to talk about, and it's been quite therapeutic for me to talk about it in this way, and that's pretty much the main reason why I made it. If you enjoyed this video and you want to check out some of my other ones, you can just click on the side, or I'm sure they will appear somewhere. If you're interested in following Merlin and I on Instagram, because that is the other platform that I'm the most active on. I'm on Instagram at Kaitehh Equestrian. I'm also on TikTok under that same name. Don't post there as much as I used to. The equestrian community on TikTok is so toxic and ridiculous, but that's a story for another day. So you can follow us on TikTok. Can't guarantee that I'm going to post there a lot. So Instagram's probably the best place to go. And I will be back soon with another video. As I film this, it's Tuesday, May 24th. Tomorrow I'm going to be filming the sort of second part of another video I'm working on, which is a review of the saddle that I bought for Merlin. So that will be up fairly soon. I have a lot of other ideas of videos I want to make. If you enjoy this type of more chatty video, definitely let me know. But until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you are. Take time to prioritize your own self-care and taking care of yourself, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye.